Hey everybody, today Rahdo rounds up the month of June 2018, which means I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about all the new games my wife Jen and I played over the last 4 weeks. And I believe I've got a list of 23 to talk about. It was a very good month, a lot of really good stuff, and this is going to be a countdown format, which means I'll start with our least favorite and end with our most, oh my gosh, which is a really, really good one. Like I said, a lot of really good stuff. But before I get going, one caveat I got to mention. Every time during this list that I say I'm talking about a game that's on Kickstarter, please remember that I was paid by the publisher of that game to do a preview. So, if you're predisposed to think that me getting paid to cover a game means I am biased, well, that's something you might want to bear in mind. But otherwise, let's get going. Alrighty. Starting with game number 23, up at the top of the list, Unlock Heroic Adventures. It did not really land with us as well as we would have hoped. We've played all the unlocks so far, and I gotta say, this group of 3, a Sherlock Holmes murder mystery, a video game scenario, and a Alice in Wonderland adventure, these 3 adventures, well, they provided the highest highs Unlock has ever given us and the lowest lows. The video game one was fantastic. Maybe in part because it's a really great nostalgic thing for both me and Jen to have this nice retro 80s video game scenario. It was really great, but the app integration into this one is the best that the Unlock series has ever done. It's absolutely amazing. It should be, since it's a video game themed one. The Sherlock Holmes mystery was kind of in the middle. It's weird. It says it's level 2, but we found it to be maybe the easiest unlock we've ever done. There really weren't that many escape room type puzzles in it. It was more of an interactive murder mystery that just happened to have kind of escape room trappings. It was good. It was okay. But the thing that brings the whole thing down for us is we hated the Alice in Wonderland adventure. It breaks so many rules that have been established by previous Unlock games. Plus, it gives you this big map sheet of paper that a lot of the puzzles are included on there, but they don't have numbers, so if you get stuck on those puzzles, there's no hints you can get. I mean, we just got stuck so much. About halfway through, we said, should we even keep going? We are having such a miserable time. And after we were done, we're like, do we even ever want to play another Unlock game after this? It was so terrible. That said, this was our response to it. As a counterpoint, Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower, I believe he said in his review of this new Unlock system that the Alice in Wonderland was his favorite one of all time, just because it was so... It's thematically appropriate how wacky and offbeat it was, but for me and Jen, it was a miserable slog and kind of brought down the whole thing for us. So that was number 23, Unlock Heroic Adventures. And then number 22 is Robinson Crusoe, Escape from Despair Island, which is a Kickstarter game that will be going live in July at some point, and I'll be doing a paid preview for it. This is a very, very interesting game because it's just a single deck of cards with a push your luck mechanism that's very reminiscent of Alexander Pfister's Port Royal. It has so much harsh, brutal, unrelenting drama because every round you're just pushing your luck trying to find the right cards that'll help you survive on this deserted island, maybe befriend Friday and have adventures that are thematically tied to the original novel. But it can be very capricious. Fate and luck can be incredibly cruel to you. Now, that's very thematically appropriate, considering the subject matter. Sometimes you end up on the wrong beach on your desert island, and you just cannot catch a break. While other players, and if you're playing competitively, might just find manna from heaven all the time. So, it can be a little frustrating, but, again, I can't fault the game. It is so thematically appropriate, and it creates such amazingly high dramatic fist bump. Oh my gosh, yes, finally! Moments that it's a game of super giddy highs and super challenging lows. And if you don't mind luck playing a big part to spice the game up, you might like it. Also, I think it does actually work very well as a solo game where it's just you against the island. But on the whole, it is a well-considered game. It's just you gotta know going in, it can be really cruel. Imagine the full Robinson Crusoe Escape from Cursed Island game from Portal Games, which is a cooperative game. If you've ever played that, you know how insanely brutal that could be when you're playing cooperatively. Now imagine that same level of brutality meted out to individual competitive players. It's a challenging game, and for me and Jen, it was probably a little bit too luck swingy. But again, I can't fault the game. It's so appropriate to the theme. It really, more than most games, captures the feeling of you against nature trying to survive. Because you know what? Sometimes nature just isn't fair. Anyway, that's number 22, Robinson Crusoe, Escape from Despair Island. Then we've got number 21, Darwinauts, which is a beautiful tile laying game for because the art is from Vincent Dutray, and the gameplay is very clever as well. It's kind of Carcassonne-esque in that players are exploring this new alien world that we have found by opening up a portal, and we're just there trying to catalog the flora and fauna. We are Darwinauts instead of astronauts, and so we're laying down tiles, putting our meeples on those tiles to lay claim to stretches of terrain so that we can harvest resources, so that we can use that to catalog the different animals and plant life we find. So that's all well and good. It kind of has a Carcassonne feel, but imagine an incredibly interactive Carcassonne where you spend just as much time focusing on building up and grabbing all the stuff you want with your meeples, but also with messing with your opponent. Oh, that's a really nice stretch of ocean you've claimed over there. It'd be a real shame if I were to take the tile in the middle of it and move it somewhere else, so now you just have a tiny little section of ocean and another ocean that it's not yours anymore. And then I'll just move my own meeple and take the other portion. So, if you like Carcassonne, but you're looking for more teeth, you're looking for more, just mad Scrabble and step over everybody else to get what you need, Darwinauts might be something worth checking out. Like I said, it's absolutely gorgeous and solid gameplay, but very, very cutthroat. Then we got number 20, Curios, which is a very, very cool little worker placement deduction game. Because basically we are sending our workers out to various dig sites around the world to collect ancient artifacts. Think Indiana Jones style. The art and the components on this game are absolutely lovely, by the way, so it has a really great table presence. But the problem is, I could send my my little worker pawns to any of, I forget, is it 5 different sites to get 5 different types of artifacts, but I don't know the value of these artifacts. It's not until the end of the game that we reveal, oh, all the red artifacts, they were worth 7 points, and the yellow artifacts, they were only worth 1 point. So what do? Well, at the beginning of the game, you have a hand of cards that gives you some imperfect information, incomplete information. Okay, well, I know yellow isn't worth 7 points, and I know yellow isn't worth 5 points. That means they're only worth 3 or 1. I should probably stay away from yellows and maybe focus on something that might be worth 5 or 7 points instead. And only I know that because I got some cards. And so, I don't want anybody else to know what I know about yellow. But here's the deal. Every round, you are given the opportunity to reveal a card from your hand, because if you do it, you get more workers. And if you have more workers, you can send them out and get more resources. So that is the crux of the very, very interesting decisions you have to make every round. Because if I can play a card to get more workers that I don't think really tells somebody something. Like I said, all the treasures are worth 1, 3, 5, or 7 points, if I recall correctly. And if I might have the numbers wrong there, but if I have a lot of information about yellow, and maybe I just tell you, oh, well, I'll tell you that yellows aren't worth 5. You might still want to go for them because you think, oh, but they could be worth 7. And I know they're not worth 7 as well. So that might be information worth giving to you and everybody else at the table so I can grab another worker. And at the same time, I am trying to figure out what you know based on your cards, hoping you reveal some cards here and there, but also just judging on where do you keep sending your workers. If you keep sending them over to the purple area, that probably means you know something about the purple, and maybe I should jump in on it too. But maybe you're just guessing and you could be letting me down we could both end up in the wrong place. It's a really clever game, and probably the strongest element to Curios is the fact that it's a deduction game that works really well with 2. That's not always the case. Often these games don't even support 2 players. So it worked really nicely. The only reason it doesn't get higher in the list is because If there's one thing I know about Jen is I've learned over the last year or so, man, she hates doing deduction because I am much better at reading her mind than she is at mine. And it always leads to frustration for her that I can just always, oh, I see, because you've done that, you think this, and therefore you're going to do that. Okay, I'll just do this. And I always just articulate. If you ever watch my run-throughs, you know how I play. I tend to articulate my thought process, even when it's not to my benefit. And Jen's like, he knows everything, and I can't figure out anything he's doing. So it's not a fault of the game. The game is really sharp and well considered. It's just not necessarily a good fit for me and Jen. Otherwise, I mean, I probably would have put it like, in the mid-teens, because it's a very, very sharp and clever game. A lot of game in a tiny little box. Curios. Then we have number 19, Lord of the Rings, Journey in Middle-earth. And this is a ginormous box, a huge experience, and in my run-through for it, I said it is probably the epitome of the Fantasy Flight style of Ameritrash sprawling cooperative adventure. That goes back to Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror and Descent and, Star Wars Imperial Assault. All these big box games that tell big, expansive stories that are, for the most part, hobbled together by random story narrative elements that bolt together to create a story that's unique to you and yours every time you play. It doesn't get any better than Lord of the Rings Journey to Middle-earth. They are firing on all cylinders. It's just about the perfect iteration of what that company does so well. That said, it's another example of a gameplay style that Jen and I just don't like. Even though there are so many wonderfully done things here that I can really appreciate. The Tolkien lore really comes to life in part because, I didn't mention, I buried the lead, this game requires you to use a digital app on your smartphone or your tablet or your laptop or whatever. It's required, but oh my gosh, it's so well done. This is the best app integration in board game history. It does so much heavy lifting and just removes all the drudgery of bookkeeping and accounting that these games often require. Right, okay, how many spaces is that guy supposed to move? Okay, oh, is he still stunned? Or, how much time do we have left? How much time has passed on the time? All this stuff is just taken care of for the app so you as a player can just focus on your character and what your character is capable of, because at any given time, you have a lot of options to juggle. Like any Ameritrashy style game with tons and tons of cards, with tons and tons of special abilities. And so the app is brilliant. And I love the fact that they dropped dice rolling for tests, skill tests, when you have to fight a monster or defend against a monster or climb a tree or open a chest or whatever. And instead, everybody has a deck of cards that's comprised of cards based on who you are and what type of adventurer you are. And basically, when you have to do a strength 3 skill check, you get to draw 3 cards from your deck, and you're looking for cards that have successes on them. And if you get enough successes, hooray, you do whatever. So it's an alternate take on dice rolling. There's still randomness, but it's a die that you have more control over because you know what's in your deck of cards. You know what the likelihood of drawing successes is. And the interesting thing is, every round, at the end of the round, the game prompts you to take cards out of your deck to put them face up in front of you so you have another special power. But every time you do that, that's likely one less success in your deck to be able to succeed at tests. That's a sharp idea. And I really thought that, plus the great digital app, plus just the wonderful Tolkienism of the game, was going to be enough to put it over the top for me and Jen. And it was for a while. We played through 5 full missions, which is like over a third of the full story campaign. And at first, we loved it. We were so enamored with it for the first couple of missions. But the more we played, the more it just kind of became repetitive for us, just constantly doing check after check after check after check. It just, all the fun and excitement just got ground out through just rote repetition. And that decision that up front seemed so cool. Oh, do I keep this card for its special power, or do I leave it in the deck to help my chances on successes? At first, that seemed really cool, but it just got, for us, to be a boring decision by just being forced to do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Too much of a good thing, in our experience, was a bad thing, and that's why, in spite of all its great things, and in spite of the fact that, everybody else in the board game industry seems to love it, we're really an outlier, it feels like. But anyway, that was our problem. That's why Lord of the Rings Journey in Middle-earth is at number 19. But then number 18 is another Kickstarter title, although this is the only Kickstarter title I am going to talk about today that is not a paid preview. I actually filmed this because one of my fans of the show wanted me to do it, so I didn't charge for this, unlike Escape from Despair Island, the Robinson Crusoe game, and Darwinauts. Those are the 2 I've talked about already. Sorry. I was just going to say that caveat up front, and then I've completely forgotten. Anyway, Robinson Crusoe, Escape from Despair Island was a paid preview. Darwinauts was a paid preview. Damsel's Tale, in spite of the fact that it's a Kickstarter game, is not a paid preview, but it is a very sharp game at number 18. It's a 2-player only battle of wits. One player is a baby dragon who's terrified that this other player, a big knight in shining armor, has broken into their dragon's lair to steal treasure. So, as the knight player, I'm just trying to move forward along a track, trying to stay hidden and get to the treasure to win. The baby dragon is trying to keep an eye out for that knight. Whenever the knight is out in the open and exposed, that is when the knight is in danger because the baby dragon can call for its mama. And if the mama shows up when the knight is exposed, it's game over for the knight. He gets eaten. So the knight is constantly moving from hiding spot to hiding spot, and the whole game is run by each turn, players play one card from their hand, and these cards are all about trying to second guess what you think your opponent is going to do. Hey, the knight is out in the open right now. That means he can intuit what he thinks the baby dragon player is going to do to take advantage of that. And because he thinks he knows what the baby dragon is going to do, he'll end up playing this counter move that will protect it. But then what if the baby dragon player zigged instead of zagged, and then the knight's player's card totally wasted that powerful card on something that he didn't need to overcome because the baby dragon anticipated what he thought the knight was going to do. The game is full of that Vicini Princess Bride style, you know what I know what you know, and therefore I think you know what it's going to, all that kind of stuff. An incredibly rich little battle of wits based on just a tiny deck of cards, a tiny board, and it works really well. The reason this doesn't rate higher for me and Jen, it's the same problem as Curios. We both thought it was very clever, but Jen had a miserable time because she just couldn't beat me because I could always anticipate what she was going to do and she could never anticipate what I was going to do. So it just didn't work for us because it's just a style of play that just doesn't fit well. It's very, very rare that we find one of these kinds of bluffing, get into the mind of your opponent style exercises that works well for her. This is a great example of the format, just didn't really fit for me and Jen. That's why it's at number 18, Damsel's Tale. Then number 17 is Point Salad. And now this is a fairly abstract card drafting game that is very appropriately named. It is a literal point salad because I forget what it is. There's something like 120 different scoring cards in the game. So there are 120 different ways to score. And what we're actually trying to do is make the perfect salad. Because while we're playing, there are 6 face-up cards on the table that are vegetables. Carrots and cabbage and lettuce and stuff like that, onions. And we're grabbing cards to add to our salad because we can score cards in different ways. And that's based on the other 3 cards that are on the table, 3 different methods of scoring. Now, I should say, every card is 2-sided. On one side, there's a vegetable, and on the other side, there's a way to score different vegetables. And what happens is, on my turn, I can either snag one of the scoring cards, which gives me a very public way to score game. Everybody knows, I really want cabbages now because I grabbed that card. Which means in the future, I will try, if you don't grab a scoring card, you get to grab 2 vegetable cards. And so in the future, I'm going to try and grab cabbages as much as I can. And everybody knows that. Maybe they try to keep cabbages away from me, especially if I get a lot of cabbage-themed scoring stuff. So here's the deal. When a player takes 2 vegetables, those vegetables are replaced not by drawing cards from the deck, but instead by taking the other scoring cards that could be drafted for, that are public information, flipping them over to their vegetable side and putting them on the table. And so that's a really clever system. It's a fast, fun game, and hugely satisfying. You score huge amounts of points at the end of this game, based on what scoring cards you grabbed and what actual vegetable cards you've grabbed. And the only problem we have with this game, by the way, we play as a 2-player game, it works really, really well. Our only issue is, as a 2-player game, it is super cutthroat. Now, there's a level of cutthroatness to all drafting games, because instead of taking a card that's good for me, I'll take a card that I particularly want, but that's bad for you, but to keep it away from you, because that's like me net scoring points. We're kind of used to that in drafting games. We accept it, but here, it was so omnipresent, because I can purposely take vegetables specifically, because I want those vegetables, but more importantly, so I can destroy your chances of getting the scoring cards you want. Like I said, hate drafting is a part of the game, but here it's ubiquitous, and it got a little bit too wearing for me and Jen. If you like drafting games that are very interactive, I cannot think of a more cutthroat, hate drafty drafting card game that's ever come out. Forget about your 7 Wonders and your Sushi Goes. This game is a wonderful, super smart, fast, fun, and hugely variable drafting game. It's just you got to go in knowing it's in spite of its cute, colorful, charming art, it is a cutthroat game, and that's why it doesn't rank higher for us. Not a reflection of quality, just a reflection of, again, not necessarily fit for us. That's why it's at number 17, Point Salad. Then number 16, Hadara. Now this is probably going to be one of the critical darlings and public commercial darlings this month, and I gotta say, it's probably a top 10 candidate. In terms of its gameplay mechanisms, it is another drafting game. It is very, very, very reminiscent of Seven Wonders, because it is an ancient civilization building game. You have 3 eras to play through, and you're trying to draft cards to make yourself stronger in warfare, wealth, culture, and food production. These are the 4 metrics you base your Hadara or civilization on. And every round you draw 2 cards from one of the various decks on the board, pick one to keep for yourself, or trash to make money. Again, think Seven Wonders. And the other card that you drew goes into a discard pile. And that's the first half of each of the 3 rounds, is players are digging through all these cards, or decks, 2 cards at a time, keep one, get rid of one. The second half of the round is all those cards that got rid of in the first half, now there's going to be a second round of drafting to grab then. Think Biblios from Steve Finn, which is one of the greatest card games of all time. This definitely shares a little bit of DNA there. Maybe this is Biblios meets Seven Wonders. I didn't think about this when I did my video run through. I should have mentioned that. That's what this game is. And that's 2 amazing games coming together. That is chocolate and peanut butter, which is why I think Hadara is going to be one of the most loved games of the year. Here's why it didn't rate higher for us. One, that second half of the round introduces a huge memory element. If you are better at memorizing than me, you will have a huge leg up over me because you remember where all the cards are in those discard piles. And personally, I don't care for that at all. Neither did Jen. We were constantly like, where did I bury that card? This is the one I really want. I don't want to miss out on getting it because I'm so poor. And we would have much rather been able to have open information about all those discard piles. Your mileage may vary. Several people are arguing with me on YouTube about how memory is a good thing in games and it should be celebrated. But I mean, it's fine. Don't get me wrong. It works well. But you just have to know, Hadara has a significant memory portion to the gameplay. And if you don't like memory in your games, you might have a problem with, like me and Jen did. We also had a problem with the thematic integration because, unlike pretty much every other Civilization game on the market, this game does not actually label what the cards are. So you don't know what breakthroughs in your civilization you're making. And therefore, it doesn't tell as interesting a thematic story. I can't sit back and say, yes, we were the civilization that really focused on diplomacy, and that really gave us a leg up in the culture wars and stuff like that. And, it becomes very abstract and dry. It's still really great. And it kind of reminds me of Splendor in that regard. A lot of people love Splendor, but man, it is so abstract. Hadara, because of a few production choices, was too abstract, and the memory didn't work for us, and that's why we rate it lower than I think pretty much everybody else in the industry. But the gameplay is really, really solid. Number 16, Hadara. Then we got number 15, Diceforge Rebellion, which is an expansion for Diceforge. And oh my gosh, when I did my video for Diceforge, my run through years ago, I said, all I want is more cards. And they have definitely delivered on this here. A ton of new cards, but they over-delivered because they also have 2 completely new modules that add significant depth to the gameplay. They've added a new die. They've added new die faces. They've added everything. And it's really well considered. Why doesn't this rate higher? Considering how much we love Diceforge, 2 things. The 2 new modules, really, I love the extra depth and weight, but they do make the game a bit longer, and I like Diceforge as a fast in and out experience. And as well, the number one thing I wanted to do was get a bunch more cards to be able to mix and match with the cards that came in the original game. But because of the restrictions, if you play this module, that's the only way you can play with these 6 cards. If you want to play with these 4 cards, you have to play with the other module. Right off the bat, there's 10 cards that can't be mixed and matched. And if I play with this module to get those 6 cards, there's 6 types of cards I cannot mix in. And so the restrictions on how you can mix and match cards was a little disappointing. Plus, there were a surprising amount of take that cards introduced, much more than was in the original game. Plus, some of the cards just don't work as well with 2 players as they would with higher player counts. So, it's a mixed bag. Overall, it's a great expansion, but it didn't quite deliver on what I was hoping for with number 15. Dice Forge Rebellion. Then we've got number 14, another Kickstarter title, and now I'm remembering to say it, is number 14 is On the Underground. Now, you'll be able to see my run through when it launches next month. But this came out originally in 2006, so this is a second edition that adds, in the original game, we were trying to lay track to build the London Underground. Now we can do the London Underground or the Berlin Underground, which, by the way, in my run-through, I say is the Munich Underground. Doi? Anyway, sorry about that mistake. And when it first came out, a lot of people dismissed it because they thought, oh, it's just like a Ticket to Ride knockoff. Because, hey, I'm just laying down track and trying to score points that way. But this game, this is like Ticket to Ride for gamers, because there is such an extra level of depth and complexity to the overall experience, because not only are you laying track, but every round there is a passenger who you have to move along these tracks to go from point A to point B, and so you're trying to lay your track, not just to claim as much of the terrain as possible, but also smartly to ensure that the passenger spends more time traveling on your rails than anybody else's. And because you can see, everybody can see, the next 4 stops for this guy, there is a lot of long-term planning that goes on. At least I should say as a 2-player game, which is how I played it. I can imagine a high player game, it becomes much more tactical because the board can so radically change before it gets around to you again. But here's the thing. Please don't tell Tom Vassell this, folks. I know he won't know because he never watches my videos. He's told me as such. But Tom Vassell has been raving about On the Underground for over a decade. He has put it in so many of his top 10 videos, so many of his top 100 videos over the year. And so I've always been interested, it's been out of print forever. Here's the thing. Tom was right. Shh, do not tell Tom I said this. But it is a really brilliant design from Sebastian Bleasdale, who is the co-designer on one of my favorite games of all time, Keyflower. Tom has been right to sing On the Underground's praises all these years. It's super sharp. And finally, for people who've wanted to try it for all these years, it's going to be available on Kickstarter next month. Number 14, On the Underground. Now let's talk about number 13, The Emperor's Choice, which actually came out last year at Essen. It's from Japanese designer Hisashi Hayashi. I think I got that right, or is it Hayashi Hisashi? I think it's Hisashi Hayashi, who I mentioned in my video, which I just filmed yesterday. I think he's kind of becoming the Stefan Feld of Japan. He just keeps putting out amazing, really sharp and clever Euro after Euro that don't reinvent the wheel, but just take some concept we really know, we've seen a lot of other games, and turn it on its head and create something completely new, and he's definitely done that with Emperor's Choice. I don't think this supplants his current masterpiece, Yokohama, but it's really, really good. It is a ancient China trying to please the Emperor situation, and there's 2 big things that make this game special. One is the auction. We go through every round for player order, which gives you so much advantage. It's an important auction to do. It gives you first dibs on all kinds of important stuff in this ancient China simulation. But the way we bid is we have 2 unique resources. Cards in our hand that represent, people we've recruited, and cubes that represent soldiers. And we can bid with a mix and match of the cubes and the cards. And the thing is, depending on if we come in first, second, third, fourth, or fifth, depending on how many players you've got, we don't give up everything we bid. We only give up the most valuable if you're first place, the second most valuable if you're second place, the third most valuable if you're in third place, resource that we bid. And that creates so much complexity about how we mix and match these different resources. I don't mind giving up soldiers. I'll do a big bundle of 4 soldiers because those soldiers will protect my level 3 person that I don't want to lose. Because if I have to lose my most valuable thing, I'd rather lose my soldiers. It's really sharp, very clever, and opens up a lot of new possibilities. Just when you thought you've seen everything there is with auctions, Hisashi comes up with something new. And then the other half of the game that's really awesome is this list of, I think it's 7 or 9 decree cards. They're all 2-sided, and they're 2 sides of the same coin. They're randomly put out at the beginning of the game, and so the emperor might decree, oh, I want to study Confucianism as opposed to legalism. I want to burn books instead of preserve books. And over the course of the game, if you've collected a lot of books, you don't want the emperor burning books. So you better get to those decrees before everybody else so you can flip that card over so it's book preservation, because everybody else can see, wow, I will score a lot of points for all my books if I can make it be book preservation. So other people want to whisper in the ear of the emperor before you do so that they can say, burn the books, emperor, so I'll lose all my books. It's a very, very interesting game that we're constantly trying to gain the emperor's trust and then spend it to change those decrees to make a landscape that supports us and doesn't support your opponents. It's a very cool take on a totally different version of area control, unlike anything I've ever seen before. So these two things combined make Emperor's Choice very, very cool. And now one more thing I should mention. If you look on Board Game Geek today, it says it's a 3 to 5 player game. Seth Jaffe, the head developer at Tasty Minstrel Games, who is reprinting the game, Tasty Minstrel is bringing it for a deluxified version to a wider audience. And he worked with Hisashi to come up with a 2-player variant, which is what Jen and I played, and I think it works very, very well. So that is number 13, The Emperor's Choice. Then we have number 12, Tasty Humans, which is another Kickstarter title. So, and Emperor's Choice, I just said, was a Kickstarter title as well. I gotta put a note on these, which ones are Kickstarters. Okay, anyway. So, what was I saying? Tasty Humans is another polyomino tile laying game. We've seen so many of these for the last few years. Everybody talks about how it's a time of roll and writes, but it's also a time of Tetris polyomino piece games too. There's so many of them coming out, new ones every month. And Tasty Humans is the latest one, but I think it's one of the most clever that's come out so far because it, like Arhayal, or Copenhagen, actually truly represents the Tetris style thing of, I get my polyomino piece and I have to put it at the top of my field and slide it down into place. Unlike other tiling games like like all the ones from Uwe Rosenberg where you just put them on the board and spread out from a central spot. So this has that Tetris feel, but here's the interesting thing. After I get my piece, which represents a tasty human that I have eaten and is coming into my belly, that's what my board is, my big monster belly, and I'm going to eat the human as he slides into place. Or I should say all the body parts do. There's a little macabre humor, but it's very cute and cartoony. I think anybody would enjoy it. I think it's pretty family friendly. But anyway, as the piece slides down and I rotate it to put it in place, it breaks apart. When a portion of that Tetris piece hits a thing, the whole piece doesn't stop. Just that portion of the piece stops, and the rest of the piece continues to fall down. That's a brilliant twist on Tetris that I've not seen in other board games. I've not seen this in other video games either. It totally reinvents the wheel and makes for much more interesting and challenging decisions about how I'm going to place and slide and rotate these pieces that I'm drafting for. Never mind the fact that the other half of the game is drafting because I'm trying to grab all the adventurers that have come to my monster lair to defeat me and eat them. But if I grab certain ones that are perfect for what I want to fit into my field, into my belly, the ones that are adjacent to it might attack me, and then I gotta drop wounds into my belly as well that'll cause me to lose points. It's a lovely, charming, thematic little game on Kickstarter, number 12. Tasty Humans. It's on right now, as a matter of fact. Then we have number 11, One Key. And now this is basically what if Codenames and Mysterium and Dixit had a baby. And you would get one key. It's a cooperative game where one player is the clue giver, think Codenames or Mysterium, and they give out they have a bunch of cards in their hand. Then they have to use these cards to communicate to the rest of their team. Now, the rest of the team has 11 cards on the table in front of them, and they are trying to figure out which one of those 11 beautiful illustrations full of interesting mishmash of stuff, think Dixit or Mysterium, which one of all those cards is the key, because they have to eliminate everything except for the key for all of us to win. I, as a clue giver, have to give you clues so you know which ones aren't there. So like in Mysterium, or Codenames, I would just give you a card and say, and I'd be saying, hey, use this to try to figure out which it is. One key goes so much farther than that because on my turn as a clue giver, I have 3 cards. And I have to, in secret, say this whether the card is really close to the key, thematically, color-wise, shape-wise, however I mean that, it bears a strong connection to the key that's out in the field. I could indicate that the card represents that, or I could say there's a weak connection, or I could say there's no connection. And I figure this out in secret. For the 3 cards, I could say, oh, you know what? All 3 of these cards are terrible. They have nothing to do with the key. Or, oh, this card is really, pay attention to this. It's just so spot on with the key. And these other ones are kind of weak connections. Anyway, I make that decision, and then I reveal all this to the player, but the players don't know what I've chosen. They have to pick one of the 3 pictures I've chosen and say, tell us about that one. And then that's when I reveal, oh, that one's a weak connection. Or that one's a strong connection. And then they have to take that information and use it to try to smartly eliminate progressively more and more things until only the one key is left. And this is so brilliant. I played this with my mother-in-law and Jen, Emily, while she was visiting us. She had a blast. She'd never seen anything like it. It works so well, but it also works great as a 2-player game. And here's the thing. If you've ever played Mysterium or games like it, Codenames, there's other ones where you have to give clues via information. Sometimes the thing you have that you can communicate with your teammates It's just useless. This tells me nothing. I've got nothing good, and you can kind of get stuck. I don't know what to use here. This game is brilliant because if you got a bunch of crap to give your opponents, just label them all crap. And then when they reveal, oh, this is crap, they know that they should use this as an example of what the key is not. That's so smart. This is such a clever twist on what is now a very well established a trope in board games, and we absolutely loved it. It just barely misses my top 10 of the month. It's so sharp. Again, what do you get if you cross Codenames and Dixit and Mysterium? You get one key, and that is a beautiful thing. Number 11. Then we have number 10, another Kickstarter title, Enchanters Odyssey. This is an expansion for Enchanters, which I did a run-through a few years ago when it was on Kickstarter. And then last year I did a run-through for its first expansion, or standalone expansion, Odyssey. Last year was Overlords. Now, the second expansion, Odyssey, has come out, and it's the best one to date. And it's interesting. I used to rank Enchanters, I liked it, but it was kind of in the mid-7s. Now it's in the 8s. It's climbed over 100 steps in my overall rankings of games, which you can see at rank.rahdo.com, based on this expansion. Because this expansion adds so many really cool, amazing new gameplay features without changing the fundamental underlying structure of the game, which is a card drafting game where we're trying to enchant an ultimate artifact. And over the course of the game, this one artifact we have keeps evolving with new enchantments and changing its fundamental shape as an artifact as well, and we're using these artifacts to save a village by fighting a constant onslaught wave of monsters. It's a super sharp game. It always has been, but my problem has always been a lot of the cards you can draft for have kind of a take that element, stealing from each other and whatnot. Odyssey is the first expansion where there's really no screwage at all. Even the cards that let you duel other players don't really feel very aggressive or conflict, which I was amazed by. Jen and I were having so much fun dueling each other in the game. But the other more important thing is this expansion introduces cooperative play to Enchanters, and it works so well. Now, you can actually retroactively apply that cooperative play to the original Enchanters because it's available via an app. But if you get this new expansion, there'll be more cooperative elements added on top of what's available just in the Enchanters smartphone app. But anyway, Enchanters is now, it's my Enchanters Odyssey, the expansion on Kickstarter, is my number 10 of the month. And oh man, when we played it the first time, Jen said, we are playing this again right now. And I believe that's what she said the first time we ever played Enchanters 2. It is so good. And now it is so perfect for us as Care Bear players. Oh man, number 10, Enchanters Odyssey on Kickstarter soon. I don't think it's launched yet. Then, number 9 is a new roll and write game from Tasty Minstrel Games, Rolled West. And now this is like the little brother, the kissing cousin to an excellent Euro game that came out a few years ago from Tasty Minstrel called Gold West. And now it captures the spirit and the feel and the theme, but really not the gameplay. It's its own beast, and it's so sharp. First of all, before we get to the gameplay, the production is so great because it doesn't come with a pad of paper. It comes with everybody getting dry erase boards. So you don't have to worry about laminating if you play this game a lot. And if you get it, I suspect you will because it's very, very sharp gameplay. The dice you roll on your turn, you roll 4 dice, and they're 12-sided dice, which right in of it there is awesome. You never get to see 12-sided dice in a roll and write. I don't know why. And while it may seem like a gimmick, it's so cool because they're 12-sided dice and they're kind of pearlescent golden die. They look like golden nuggets. So it feels like you're rolling those nuggets to see what you're going to get. Just that in and of itself is so brilliant. And it's another great example of the wonderful production on this game. Tasty Minstrel put a lot of love into a tiny little boxed roll and write, and they did it right, and they kind of shame everybody else on the market in doing it. But anyway, that aside, the gameplay is really good too, because after I rolled these dice, the die faces have two meanings. They're multi-use dice. The dice could either be a mineral that I mine or a location that I mine in. Each die has 2 faces. After I roll my 4 dice, one of them has to be set aside as the location that I will do my mining operations, if I do mining operations. Because then I've got 3 more dice that I can use for tons of different things. I can use them for shipping goods back east, which was an element in Gold West. I can use them to help build up the local gold shanty town. I can use them to actually go mining. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with these dice. And the other brilliant thing is, while I'm figuring out how I'm going to use all these dice on my turn, everybody else is invested because other players, once, when it's not their turn, can use a die that their opponents have drafted. So if you on your turn can just never roll the copper you need, but then I roll copper on my turn, finally you can snag it and bank it so you can use it on your turn. Super sharp. We were over the moon with this, which is why a tiny little roll and write makes my number 9 of the month, Rolled West. Then we go on to number 8, Margraves of Valeria, another Kickstarter title coming soon. The Valeria series has always been great. What do we got? We have, they're all right here, Valeria Card Kingdoms, Villages Valeria, and Quests of Valeria are all lots of fun. And if they have one thing in common, because they all do different things, multi-use cards, worker placement, dice activation stuff. But there's one thing in common. They are all games that very quickly ramp up so that every turn you take, even though it seems like a really simple turn, becomes a big combo-laden explosion of actions you get to do that are super duper satisfying. And if there's one other thing they all have in common, they all have wonderful art from the Miko. Margraves of Valeria delivers on both of those things. Designer Isaias Vallejo has made his best Valeria game to date, I believe, because while those other ones were tiny little, unambitious, simple games, this one is a much bigger production. It's got a big old board. Finally, we get to see Valeria in all its glory as we travel around the world. And, in traveling around the world, it has kind of a feel, really nostalgic for me and Jen, of the old PC adventure games, Heroes of Might and Magic, because we're traveling around on our horseback, visiting the different locations to fight off monsters that are ravaging the land or to gather resources to build up defenses. And there's tons of different ways to score points. And it's kind of hard to classify this game. It kind of has some drafting, kind of some worker placement. There's a lot of stuff going on. But the important thing is, all of it comes together so that every turn feels so epic and you get so much stuff done. It's super duper sharp. It's the best Valeria, and Valeria has always been very good. Jen and I really enjoyed our time with number 8. The Margraves of Valeria. Like I said, coming to Kickstarter soon. Then we have number 7, another Kickstarter title. And I think it's still live now. It's going to be over pretty soon if it's not already. This is Endeavor, The Age of Expansion. Now, last year, Endeavor got its second edition, Endeavor, Age of Sail. I didn't get to cover it last year, which is kind of a bummer, but I finally got my full final copy. And then, first of all, I should say, Endeavor, Age of Sail is amazing. Endeavor was always great, but Age of Sail adds so much new gameplay and history. Endeavor has always been amazing to me because it does not shy away from the darker chapters of history while still making a fun and engaging civilization building, or actually I should say colonization simulation game, where again, it addresses head on the man's inhumanity to man, and Age of Sail just increased that exponentially and really doubled down on that. So it's amazing. I mean, I've always said Endeavor is a game that belongs in every civics class in the world so that kids can play this game and understand history in a way that a dusty textbook never could, because you are faced with the same decisions that these European nations had to go through when they were basically taking over the world and, putting the world under its boot. All that stuff is addressed in Endeavor while still being a compelling and engaging gameplay experience. And now its expansion, Age of Expansion, just adds even more. Puts more historical elements in the game. My favorite one is probably the opportunity where one player can actually declare independence, North American style. And then all of a sudden they are playing a radically different game than everybody else because they cut all their ties to Europe. There are so many cool game-changing elements here while still building on the underpinning structures of what always made Endeavor a really sharp engine-building game at its heart. I was blown away by just how amazing. That's why it's at number 7, Endeavor, The Age of Expansion. Then we've got number 6, The Edge of Darkness, Dunestar. And now, actually, I could just say The Edge of Darkness because this was another game I covered on Kickstarter last year. I finally got a retail. By the way, for folks who haven't gotten your retails, they're coming soon. I got an advanced one so I could do a video for it and talk about Dunestar. And here I am talking about it. Dunestar adds so much to Edge of Darkness. Because really, my one complaint with Edge of Darkness when I did my Kickstarter video for it was, need more cards, please. And Dunestar delivers big time. This is, the same story I was talking about Dice Forge earlier. But where Dice Forge gave you a bunch of cards, but you can't really mix and match as much as you want, Dunestar, the first expansion for Edge of Darkness, is brilliant at being able to mix and match stuff. Especially because this is something I would like to see more games do. You know how if you get an expansion for Dominion, it comes with a bunch of suggestions. Hey, here's some ways you can mix and match cards in preset sets, and we give them names, but that's it. Here, they do the same thing, but they make those preset suggestions of how to mix and match cards from the base game with the new game, and they make them part of a narrative that gets told as showing the evolution of the city of Aegis over several chapters. And that just creates a much stronger narrative than you'll see in any other deck builder. Oh, did I mention, by the way, this is a deck builder. But here's the trick. There is one deck. All the cards we get, and we all put into one deck, and then when the deck spits out new cards every round, I could try to draft my cards, or I could try to draft the cards you've put in there, which means I then have to pay you for them, but maybe I want to take advantage of the card you have built. That in and of itself is really cool, but then the other cool element from a gameplay point of view is, this is from John D. Clare, the designer of Mystic Vale. And like Mystic Vale, this is a card deck building game where we don't just put new cards in the deck, we build cards. We take a card that maybe has a little power and then give it a second power, so it becomes a super card. And later on, we give it a third power, so it becomes a super duper card. And then it goes in the deck. And so when one of your super duper cards comes out, I want to snag it. But here's the beautiful thing. You might think, oh, well, that means it's kind of aggressive. I can hate draft your card away from you, and yeah, you'll get some money. But here's the thing. After I hate draft your card and use it to full effect because it really helps my strategy, and I pay you for it, at the end of my turn, I give you your card. So you'll use it next turn anyway. Oh my gosh, this really flips the head on hate drafting because it's just a very Care Bear friendly game. Who knew hate drafting could become Care Bear friendly where everybody wins? I'm blown away by just the core design of Edge of Darkness, and Dunestar just adds more goodness, more narrative, more cool, interesting gameplay effects, and I was blown away by it. It's my number 6, and I'm very sad to say, folks, as far as I understand it, Edge of Darkness is never going to come to retail, because apparently the production costs on it are too high, and AEG has not found out a way to make it profitable. So I hope players who didn't back it on Kickstarter last year, when I said back it, it's amazing, I hope you'll get a chance to pick it up in the future if you like deck building, if you like card crafting, if you want to see deck building done in a cool new way. Edge of Darkness, and by its expansion, Dunestar, deliver on all of that. But let's move on to number 5. We have Pandemic Rapid Response. And when I first heard about this, I was over the moon because I love designer Kane Klenko's take on real-time cooperative dice rolling games. Fuse is amazing. Flatline is really great too, although Fuse is still the top. And so, knowing that he was taking his design aesthetics for real-time cooperative dice and bringing it to the Pandemic universe, my favorite game of all time, yes please, and I'm happy to say it delivers totally, which is why it's my number 5 of the month. It's interesting. We're on a plane racing around to hotspots around the world, and while we're on the plane, we're rolling dice as fast as we can, racing against the clock to prepare care bundles, batteries and food supplies and water supplies, so that when we get to the hotspot, we can just kick that stuff out of the back of the plane and then keep flying to the next area, because time is our enemy. But the interesting thing is that this is a real twist from most real-time cooperative games. Usually in a game like Escape or Kane's other games, everybody does their thing simultaneously. We're all working at the same time, racing against the clock. Here, it's my turn. I roll the dice, I re-roll, I try to figure out how to use them, and then once I'm done, we move on to the next player. So you feel even more pressure, because when it's your turn, everybody's watching, waiting to go. And you might think, oh, that sounds terrible. I don't want that kind of pressure. But it's amazing how this creates a great collaborative atmosphere, because like any real-time cooperative game, the decisions, if you just had 20 seconds to think, they're super easy. But with that time pressure, it is easy to get blinders on and forget, what do I need to focus on, because you just focus on this one little thing. Everybody else who's not your turn, they can see what you're doing too, and they can help you. Oh my gosh, you got 2 electricity. Maybe you should forget about packaging the food, because we need electricity too. Don't forget, the next town we're going to needs a bunch of electricity. And like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Thank you. And then when it comes around, I'm not my turn, and I'm watching everybody else, I can be helping them too. Everybody's constantly involved, and it really creates a very unique feel, which is why Pandemic Rapid Response is my number 5. Oh, but there's more, folks. Number 4 is another Kickstarter game. It is the 3rd edition reprint of Pret-a-porter, which Jen and I have always been huge fans of. We had the 2nd edition years ago, and having gotten reacquainted with it, the 3rd edition that is coming to Kickstarter very soon, next month, wow, I am blown away all over again, because I'm just going to say it. This is the best Euro-style business simulation the board game industry has ever produced. It is amazing, because there are a lot of industry simulations out there, but often they replicate what the industry does, not the industry itself. Like, think of Power Grid. Power Grid is a business simulation. I'm running a power company. But I don't know. I don't feel like I'm running a company. I don't know who my employees are. I don't have to worry about overhead or hiring practices or anything like that. Pret-a-porter puts you in the role of a CEO, and you really feel it, unlike any other game out there. And that's what sets it apart. The other thing that sets it apart is your industry is the fashion industry, which means the game is full of riotous color, explosion of style, and the substance is there. The gameplay, it's a worker placement game, is so good. It's always been amazing. And now the presentation from artist Kwanchai Morio, a real hot artist these days, it just looks as amazing as it plays. Now that said, I'm a little nervous because my prototype still had some weird rules vagaries, which is crazy because Pret-a-porter has always suffered from rules vagaries, but I believe the publishers have taken steps to ensure that the final version will finally squash out all of those issues. And that aside though, the gameplay is amazing. It is just it's the best business simulation ever. And it works great with 2 as well. So that is my number 4 on Kickstarter soon, Pret-a-porter. Number 3 it's my Splendor killer, folks. It's fine. For years, people have been saying, this is a Splendor killer, this is a Splendor killer. No. Space Explorers is the true Splendor killer. And it's such a bummer. It actually came out 2 years ago in Russia, and only in Russia. So it had a very small audience. And it's too bad, because if it had gotten a wider audience back then, during kind of Splendor and Century Spice Road Mania, maybe more people would have noticed it. Because it... ever since Splendor came out, there has been kind of a push. Year after year, we're seeing more and more great little gateway-style, fast-playing, quasi-abstract games with super simple rules but deep gameplay that just explode in popularity. Splendor created a formula, and other games have definitely capitalized on it, like Century Spice Road, like Azul, and stuff like that. Space Explorers, as far as I'm concerned, destroys all of them, because I played most of them, and they're all very, very good, but for different reasons they don't really resonate with me in Gen. Space Explorers, just to compare with Splendor, has more depth while still being just as easy to pick up and play, because it's a card drafting game where the cards I'm grabbing are members of my space agency: engineers, scientists, astronauts, builders, and testers. And I'm trying to get groups of these together. And the more I focus on testing or building or whatever, the cheaper it is for me to get more cards along those lines. So I kind of focus and make a little mini engine. So I want to focus on things. But I also want to diversify, because I have to get a wide variety of disciplines in my space agency to complete the various space projects, which are all based on real historical processes at the height of the space race. The interesting thing, that's a very tough choice: diversify or specialize. Because you can score points either way, and you can trigger the end of the game in both ways. But the very interesting thing is, every round, while I'm spending my resources to grab these cards, either by discarding cards, which I don't want to do, which means I put them back in the public so somebody else can get them. I don't want to do that. How else do I pay for these cards? Well, I have resources, resource chits that I can spend to get these cards. But what do I do when I spend these resources? They don't go into the supply. They go to you. I end up having to give resources to my opponent to build these cards. And so every time I get stronger, I make you stronger as well. That is so cool. It's an incredibly simple game. Every turn, you're just going to grab and play a card. And how you pay for that card, and what that card is. And also, I forgot to mention, all these cards provide you resources you need, but most of them provide special powers too. And so I get this card, I put it at the top of my engineer stack, and I've got this great special power, and I love it. But what if another engineer comes along that I really need to complete this project? I've got to cover over and I lose that special power to get this new engineer. It's just full of really tense, just agonizing decisions. There's so much game here and so little. And it's now getting a wider release finally 2 years later. And I hope it's not too late. I hope it finds an audience, because, again, it's a Splendor killer. And I don't mean to disparage Splendor. Splendor is a brilliant design too. It wasn't for me in Gen because it's so abstract. Space Explorers, though, is richly thematic, and it is so much better in terms of gameplay. It's my number 3. But we're not done yet, folks. Let's move on to my number 2, which is weird because this is a game I actually covered 2 roundups ago. And it was in like the mid to high teens. It didn't rate that high. NEOM. Why is it here again? And why did it go from high teens 2 months ago to my number 2 game of the month? Here's the thing. When Neon first shipped last year, no, was it 2 years? No, it was last year. I pretty much dismissed it out of hand because I knew it had a very, very nasty cutthroat element where it's a card drafting game or tile drafting game where we're building a city. And so, I have my hand, I pick one, I hand the rest to another player. But amongst all the tiles we'll be drafting to build our cities, every era, there are 3 eras, the 7 wonders, actually it's interesting, the designer has kind of positioned this as his 7 Wonder Killer, where he fixes the problems he had with 7 Wonders. And I think that's a very audacious goal, and I think it succeeds in a lot of ways. That's why it rates so high for me. But anyway, the problem was, one of the cards I could draft for is a disaster card. And if I play that card, then the disaster hits everybody else and I am unaffected. So it's like this game of chicken. Now, nobody wants to do it because that means I'm not spending a turn building my city up. Instead, I'm spending a turn hitting everyone else. So when that card comes in my hand, I have to play, because if I don't, I'll hand it to my opponent and then they'll play it on me. So I knew I wasn't going to like that. I ultimately did try the game a couple months ago, and I thought it was brilliant. Its design is amazing, but yeah, I was right. I didn't like it. So it ranked very, very high. Like some of the ones I've mentioned today that rank high, not because they're bad games, because they're just not a good fit for me in Gen. Or I should say rank low. They're further back on the list. Here's the deal. In the 2 months since I did that run through, the designer of NEOM stepped forward on Board Game Geek and provided a variant that keeps the disasters in the game, or the 2 variants. One that takes the disasters out completely, which I would never want to play with, because the disasters are a key element to creating tension and excitement in the game. So I wouldn't use that variant, but he did another variant that keeps them in, but they are no longer played by players. Instead, there's kind of a countdown clock, and everybody can see it, and everybody knows when it's coming, and everybody has the equal chance to prepare. And oh my God, it's perfect. It works so well, and it is catapulted NEOM. It's why I've had to do another roundup to play this new official variant from the designer that makes it Care Bear friendly and makes it amazing. My number 2 of the month. But this is it, folks. You've waited long enough. What is my number 1? Well, it's another Kickstarter game. It's on Kickstarter right now. It is blowing up, and with good reason, because I would be shocked if Isle of Cats isn't in my top 10 games of the year. It is that good. It's another polyomino game. And, so at this point, there are so many. What makes this one stand out? Hey, I talked about another one earlier, Tasty Humans. So many polyomino Tetris tile laying games out there. Well, this thing, if I had to say one thing that makes this stand out from all the other ones on the market, this is a game for gamers. All these polyomino Tetris games, the ones from Uwe Rosenberg, your Spring Meadows and Cottage Gardens, the ones from other, Copenhagen, even Tasty Humans. These are all lighter, family-friendly gateway games that don't have a lot of rules overhead. They're great games to play with total novices, and they work really well because it is fundamentally satisfying to puzzle pieces together. Tetris has a formula that is universal and eternal for a reason, and board games are smart to leverage it. But they always leverage it in ways that make sense because they're going to have such a nice universal appeal. Make it a gateway game. Isle of Cats says, no, this is a game for gamers because, first of all, the polyomino pieces are crazy complex. They're not just simple Tetris pieces. So the puzzle of puzzling them together is much more challenging. What are we trying to do, by the way? I should have led with that. Oh, it's an Isle of Magical Cats that's under threat from pirates. So we've come here on our boats to save the cats and put them on our deck and puzzle them all together and save as many cats as possible while keeping families together and letting the cats eat the rats that are on our boats and all kinds of stuff. It's driven by a card draft, 7 Wonders style, but a very smart card draft where you get to keep 2 cards every round instead of 1, which just that right there is game-changing for drafting. But the deck of cards we're drafting is so thick. There is so much, special achievement cards, special power cards, so many things to do. Plus, it's an economic game too because we only have so many fish that we can catch each round that we use to pay for the cards we draft and for the cats we save. So how do we spend all our resources? It is deep, it is rich, it is gorgeous, it is funny, and it just has replay for days. And like I said, it's a heavier, weightier game. It's closer to a midweight than a lightweight game, which you could argue, what about Feast for Odin? I don't consider Feast for Odin a Tetris game. It's a worker placement game that, by the way, has a side of Tetris. Isle of Cats is a Tetris puzzly game that has a side of card drafting. Anyway, sorry. That's all as an aside. Here's the other thing that makes Isle of Cats amazing. I just spent all this time talking about how great it is because it's a gamer's game. It's not a gateway game. It comes with family-friendly gateway rules too that makes it compete side by side with your Baron Parks, and all the Uwe Rosenberg games. And in a lot of ways, I think is superior to those games also. It suddenly becomes a very simple game. While my mother-in-law, Emily, was visiting us last month, we sat down and played with her. She wanted to play it twice in a row because she loves cats so much, and it was so much fun, easy for anybody to learn and pick up and play. Also, by the way, it comes with a really fantastic solo variant, which I demonstrated in my Kickstarter preview. So, Isle of Cats, phenomenal. It's the cat's pajamas. And it's my number 1 of the month. And that's it, folks. We are out of here. That is another roundup in the bag. And I'll see you again in another 4 weeks. And by the way, the next roundup is going to be crazy because my wife, Jen, is gone for the entire month of July. She'll be traveling with her family in England. And so I'm all alone. No one to play games with. But that's okay, because I declare July is the beginning of my solo summer. Every game that I will talk about in the next roundup, I'll be talking about from a solo perspective, because I will have played them and run through them and rank them and all that based on their solo gameplay, because Jen will be home for a while. And so you can look forward to that in 4 short weeks, or you can just, watch them as I post them. But anyway, that's it, folks. Another roundup, all done. Thanks for watching. Have a very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.